my message here is short. I will present our implementation of Sonic protocol and some tests that we are doing with private transactions. So we implemented Sonic, and it's an updatable setup protocol. So we have this feature implemented. It's really important because some applications can't be used if you have no way to trust the setup. And we have a constraint system that is similar to R1CS, very similar, but unfortunately it's not compatible. So although it's similar, the small difference make a huge problem for compatibility and interoperability. And the good news here is that we open sourced the implementation recently. Last week we created the GitHub and made it public. So you can see here the link. And well, beyond the implementation of Sonic protocol, we implemented some gadgets, Boolean operations, elliptic curve operations on jujube curve, commitments. Well, basically the same building blocks that we have for sapling. And so we have the Merkle tree, and we have also Pedersen commitment, but in our case, we replaced the Pedersen commitment in the Merkle tree by Poseidon function. And we also implemented Blake 2. So with all those building blocks, we could implement the circuit for private transactions. So here we can see the circuit represented with these boxes. Well, the Merkle tree here, I'm not saying that we are using Poseidon function. It's another building blocks inside Merkle tree. And well, it was a big effort. This circuit was implemented by hand. And because we have, as I'm going to show next slide, we have a compiler, but in the case of a specific circuit in this constraint system, it's much more efficient to do it by hand. So basically, our implementation of this private transaction system is summarized by the replacement of growth 16 by Sonic, and the replacement of the hash function in the Merkle tree by Poseidon. So this is what we did in this experiment, and you can check out on GitHub. Well, actually the circuit is not yet there, but you can use Sonic to implement your own circuits. We have a lot of examples there to see how to implement a circuit. And we have good news about the results. We have some timings here, and we can see that in order to generate the spanned circuit, for the proof, proving it takes 9 seconds, and verification takes 58 milliseconds. It's not as good as growth 16, but it's pretty much comparable. It's just a little bit less efficient. And we have the helper. So there is also this entity that's going to help the computation of the circuit. And it takes 6 seconds. It's supposed to be done by miners, for example. So that's the idea. The miners can help the calculations. So this is an optimization of the protocol. And for the output circuit, it's almost 1 second to prove it, and 15 milliseconds to verify the proof. And the helper is very efficient, just 600 milliseconds. So as I mentioned, this is pretty much comparable to Zcash implementation, but we have the non-trusted setup. So, well, there is no free lunch. So we are not as efficient as Zcash, but the price, I would say it's cheap. You don't pay too much to have this updatable setup. Well, as I mentioned previously, we have the compiler. So the compiler can, we have a functional language that can be compiled to circuits. But for private transactions, we can have 50% more efficient implementation if we do it by hand. So we tailored the implementation of the circuit just for this specific example for private transactions. And the compiler can be used for private smart contracts. So it's a generic compiler. So it's very powerful, and it's going to be open source soon. I don't think it's already available, but it will be available soon, also the compiler. And I would like to mention a couple of challenges that we had during the implementation. And this is important in terms of interoperability. We need to check the way that things get implemented in sapling. And if we want to have interoperability, we need to use the same generators in the elliptic curve. We need to use the same personalizations in hash functions and encoding. So there are a lot of small details that are important to be consistent with our implementation when compared to other implementations. So those details are sometimes mentioned in the workshop, and I think it's important to discuss those details because we need to have standard generators and personalizations so that if people implement those standards, they can talk to each other in these protocols. And also the hash to point methods. These are all important details for consistency of different implementations. And we also had a lot of challenges to do the implementation by hand because we need to implement things using a system that is similar to R1CS. This is challenging by itself, but it's expected. So, well, this is it. This is the description of the work we have been doing in last months. So IOHK now is releasing this implementation so that the community can play with it. And if you have further questions, I think that the communication channel is GitHub. It's pretty much the way we can communicate. And we have, well, I can leave the link for you here. And well, we are also hiring. You can participate as IOHK employer, but you can also participate in the community using the open source version. So this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. Again, we have time for one question. If anyone wants to ask anything.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Can I ask one?
Yes.
So I thought that Sonic was very expensive in terms of pre-processing the circuit because you had to put some constraints on fan in and fan out. Like you had to change the way you process the circuit. Is this right? Or?
Well, it's not as efficient as Graph 16, but it's not expensive. It's if you look into the paper, from the paper we already expected it would be possible to have an efficient implementation because we can also batch. I didn't put numbers here for batching, but if you batch, for example, 10 or 100 or 1,000 proofs together, these times are going to get better. They are going to decrease a little bit. And also we have efficient parallelization of calculations. So, well, it's implemented in Rust with lots of optimizations. With respect to those two circuits, we still can optimize a little bit. So we know small implementations that can be added to optimize the code, but the biggest optimizations are done.
Do you plan to implement other, so I don't know, Marlin or things like this? Or?
Not right now. We have some work to do before that. We have plans to release this implementation of private transactions, maybe, I don't know. But first we need to finish this work. And so this is not planned.
Okay.
Yes.
A very quick question. How long is the running time of updating? You don't have updating time here.
I'm afraid we don't have really time for a proper answer. We have 40 seconds before we go. But feel free to chat independently and ask.
Okay, sure.
This is just a teaser.